Yes, as I said, we are going to have our countries for persons presenting their reports. We have different countries for persons from different countries. And you can see that we still have a low number. We can continue inviting our friends and family to join us on this call today. Our first countries per person, we have Anna Negola from Namibia. Anna Negola, you can unmute yourself. Yes, I think our sister Anna Negola is experiencing bad network issues. We can continue with Clyde Ford. Yes, Clyde Ford, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. You're hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
You hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you once again for the opportunity to be able to share on my country and as a Pan-Africanist, the actual cause and effects that we are experiencing here in Guyana. My name is Clyde Fowler, and I am an ambassador for iloveblackpeople.com. And Pan-African unites us across the world. And here is an example of that unity being demonstrated through this platform in which we are a part of. I want to say, firstly, thanks to the organizers and thanks for being a part of our Pan-African history and health care led by Dr. Taryn Wright and Nana Kua. And today I know that as Pan-African people, that Pan-African is a social and political philosophy and movement that has had a lasting impact on the liberation of African people globally. And we are seeing it more so now because of technology. We are getting to be acquainted with some of the things that would have occurred during the past that was hidden is now being revealed. And we have this opportunity to learn from the experience and the activists, the experience of the activists that have led before us. Today we have the leverage of technology to mobilize and to organize community in line or outline the struggles and or otherwise for the spiritual, mental, and physical development that has been going through, that the process has been started through our apps and through programs such as these and platforms that are used to demonstrate what unity is all about. We have a slogan, I am because we are, because when we look back from whence we came to where we are, we can say that the Pan-African movement have people who have leadership, who have vision, who have developmental programs that focus on the mental health because this is on the increase, sustainable economic development programs and strategies, as we would have heard from the very beginning of this program that was illustrated by the radio program, and to organize and to manage the development of countries, families, and communities. Here in Guyana, we are a new oil giant. We have the oil discoveries. However, because of these developments, we, the citizens of Guyana, is not feeling like so many other countries the benefits of having such natural resource. Like any other, as they called us, third world country, we know that all our resources are being shipped to the first world and the second world. Thus, we come to the understanding, like the sciences of yesteryear, such sociological discoveries and findings, that we are in a system of struggle. More so when we look at our past, we remember the future. We look forward to the future rather, to be able not to go back, but to elevate ourselves above the level. But having more resources here doesn't mean we have more economic value. We have less value to ourselves and more to others, because as we find the oil, we get to understand that ExxonMobil has been getting all the royalties, all the monies and everything, and the foreign countries have been benefiting more than us as Guyanese. We are being termed as not well educated and prepared to deal with this oil discovery. Thus, we need help to make it a better for us, but we are still not feeling. We need leaders that dare to fight for change in this current economic, political, and social climate, looking for betterment for us as African and people of African descent, while exploring the possibilities of inclusive culture, history of the many tribal settlements, and the differences that so makes us a unique continent, a unique people. We know that slavery has not made us weak, but has given us the opportunity to stand better. In the midst of adversity, we have proven as Black people that we can strive. All the men and women before us have made a difference for Black people. And the question is being asked, what difference is, or what's the difference you are making? What you have done today to protect Black people from racism and xenophobia. Here it is. We have an app that has given us the opportunity to be united. So I would like for us to share the I Love Black People app. I would like for us to be able not only to share the app, but to encourage others that, you know, they have a voice. And by putting them in place, we can make a difference. I am because we are. Ambassador Clyde Fowler. Thank you.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, Ambassador Clyde Fowler, all the way from Guyana. We do appreciate you. Thank you for the call for everyone to protect our own, protect your brother, protect your sister. We should love each other. Let's spread the love to all the corners of this earth. Let's love each other, and let's use the app to recommend or share safe places for Black people. And also for those who have not yet introduced themselves, kindly do so in the chat room. Again, my name is Awod Ngwenya. I'm co-hosting the meeting with our sister, Yvonne Dushime, all the way from Rwanda in Kigali. So without wasting time, we also want our speakers to all of them to perform today. So we're rushing all the way to Sierra Leone, where our brother Mohammed Samba Kamara to speak. Yes, brother Mohammed, I can say it and unmute yourself. Yes, brother Kamara, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
All right. Thank you so much. You can go ahead, introduce yourselves, and present. We are running out of time, so kindly go ahead and present.
Okay. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you. This is very important for me, as far as I'm concerned, because being part of this movement, to me, I see it as a blessing. So me representing Sierra Leone is also a blessing. To start with, I want to take this opportunity to thank the organizers, to thank all of you for your support and your enlightenment in making us to understand the importance about our culture, our race, and as part of our education. Okay, as I was introduced, my name is Mohammed Samba Kamara from Freetown, Sierra Leone. And I want to talk about some of the concerns that I have, particularly when it comes to racism. To me, I see racism as a means of us destroying ourselves, which is very bad. And racism, we are all human. So how can we support racism, in terms of having our humanity, and particularly to us as colored or Black people? Okay, we colored or Black people, we are always victimized, or we are the victims, particularly to ourselves. I like the way my brother talked about the way we treat ourselves, that we have more love and concern for other people than ourselves. Okay, like we love strangers, we love foreigners than ourselves, which is not good. Okay, so I love Black people coming up with this kind of sensitization, particularly to us as young people. Sorry about that. To me, it's very important to know about my roots, to know about my culture, to know about my history and my people. Okay, so we have to get that kind of education. Okay, and it's true, some of these things that we know, the Pan-Africanist movement, and appreciate leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Siaka Stevens, and the likes of it. So, and we cannot do without the foundations of the foundation of these people, because they are the pace setters and we have to follow them. Okay, but mostly we tend not to follow their cause, which is not good. And on that racism thing, it leads to something that we kill ourselves in civil war. Okay, I'll give an example like in Sierra Leone, or quite recently in South Africa, when we talk about xenophobia. Okay, a Nigerian or Sierra Leonean or Gambia has the right to live in South Africa or in whatever country. We are all Africans. We are just one people. Okay, so for instance, the Sierra Leonean should be hardworking and make sure you try to live up to standard so that you survive. If you fail to do so, then the Nigerians, the South Africans, or Gambians come to my country and take things serious and move on with their own life and live with that kind of standard. And we getting jealous to say, hey, these people have taken over our country. To me, it's just like craziness. That is part of what is known as the mental disturbance, So like, to me, that's just like straightforward thing that we have mental disability. Okay, how can you see your brother, your colored brother, and then you just say anything against that person, try to destroy them, all of the sort? So, for instance, I can give vivid example for us here in Sierra Leone. For instance, in Sierra Leone, when we talk of the things that normally disturb us, one, we have peace in everything. The only thing that disturbs us here, if I can give an example, is when it comes to election. When it comes to election, you see people divided into section, into group, into tribes, or into political parties. But when it comes to religion, when it comes to like things like marriage, cultural display and so on and so forth, we're all united. So I think politics here has to be something that we unified us as well, like sport. Okay, so I think this is some of the things that we are facing. For instance, like in Nigeria, we know they have religious fight between Christians and Muslims and so on and so forth. But for Sierra Leone, as an example, I think we have that religious tolerance. But when it comes to politics, then you can sense the zest of xenophobia. You can sense how it can destroy us in a twinkle of an eye. And people do forget about the war, the 11-year civil war that we've gone through. So I believe some of the things is very important. And when it comes to colonialism, for me, I think we are just saying that colonialism has ended. But I want to say perhaps we are in a modernized, kind of colonialism. We are in still, we have dictators around us with their policies and their fundings, be it on the beaches, the IMF, or how they call it, the UNDP, all of them. you know, they give what they want, they say what they want. If you follow their policies and what they want, then they give you their funds. If not, then they won't support you. So I think we are still in that kind of still slavery because they dictate, you know, and they put their mouth where the money is. So for me, I think we need to think that kind of trajectory. We need to make Africa a place for Africans. Okay, just like most of our Africans brothers are against Donald Trump, but Donald Trump is trying to make America for the Americans. So if we can follow suit to make Africa for Africans, you know, despite we can allow other people, we are not supporting racism. So, but we need to focus on ourselves and support ourselves, promoting our culture and so on and so forth. And I want to say plenty thank you to I Love Black People founders and those that are supporting and making things happen. And I want to request concerning the t-shirt, the Black People t-shirt, so that we can have access to it here in Sierra Leone. We can sell it so that we can raise the awareness, so that people can know much about what we do and try to move around schools, set up school network so that people know. Because for me, I think the young people are the key people who target the young people and people for mainstream government. So this is where I want to stop. I know I am because we are. So I want to thank you all.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much, Mohammed Samba, for a nice report. Up next, we are going to have Anna Nengola. You can unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anna Negora from Namibia. And today, my today's presentation is going to be about youth empowerment and innovation. It is with great esteem pleasure that I got this chance to present once again on Pan-African history. And I'm glad to be part of the representing the winning team. My sincere greetings and appreciation to you all. I would recommend people around the continent, Mother Africa, and I would like to extend this message to everyone, wherever you are finding yourself, to download our I Love Black People app to ensure your safety is guaranteed. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present to you what is in the light of my emphasis again this time around, once more again, which is innovation and youth empowerment. Nothing of greatness can ever be achieved by any country without giving importance to their youth. Youth is an amazing thing because it is not only the hope of our future, but the actual strength of our nation as well. Our youth can create a difference only when they are empowered, and empowered youth is one who learns to work on developing their skills to start earning at an early stage and acquiring leadership skills. Ladies and gentlemen, the youth are the only brightest of the nation and the backbone of leaders. Therefore, youth must be empowered through 4 various ways. Number 1, we are going to look at considering youth. Point number 2, create inclusive opportunities for youth and build networks. Point number 3, equipping youth. And the last point will be social entrepreneurship. Let us consider youth. Youth should consider to ensure that youth is not only heard but understood, not only engaged but empowered, and not only contribute to development but leading to global efforts and sustainability. As a Pan-African ambassador, therefore leveraging young people's neck on digital and technical innovation and social entrepreneurship must be strengthened, taken into consideration and account, and must be prioritized. Okay, we move on to our second point, which is create inclusive opportunities for youth and build networks. How are we going to deal about this? The 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda finds its driving engine in the empowerment and support of the new generation. For us today, have the unprecedented opportunity to strengthen relationships between development agents such as young people, the private sectors, and policymakers to produce effective and innovative solutions. Inclusivity means creating opportunities to engage with representation from all backgrounds, elevating the voices of those who live with the problem, and intentionally integrating those perspectives into problem framing and ideation activities. Then we look at our second last point, which is equipping youth. How do we equip youth? We as Pan-Africans and expecting youth to contribute to development must put youth in the driver's seat so they can decide how to improve their own environment through innovation. By equipping them with the skills, resources, and networks they need to solve problems in their community and ensure empowered to lead the process, we have seen youth support job creation, contribute to economic growth, and much more. It is only result in a better economy of our country, which is fluctuating most of the time, but also habit and sense of responsibility in our youth to do more. Our last point is social entrepreneurship. Furthermore, youth social entrepreneurship in support of the 2030 agenda represent a nimble and flexible option that allows a wide array of partners from all sectors to come together with youth and serve communities while generating employment. In conclusion, with this being said, we cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the brightest future ahead, empowering youth to inspire the next generation. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Yes, I am because we are.
Yes, I am because we are. Thank you very much, Anna Negola from Nigeria, for a wonderful presentation. So we are going to continue with Nana Akua. She already joined the call. If you want to have a shout out from her, you can turn on your camera. Yes, Nana Akua, welcome.
Good. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. How you doing, Yvonne?
Doing well.
And Clyde and Rogers and Natalia and Benjamin, and is that all the cameras on? Okay, well, that is fine. Okay, I don't think there are any more, but thank you all for indulging. I will start today with we have 2 more sessions left in this cycle, but as you know, you can always continue on, and we kind of repeat and build on what we teach on each week. And so we talked last week about stress release, and we talked about some ways to identify stress, how to manage stress. It's very important. I'd like to kind of recap the importance of really evaluating how you feel emotionally, mentally, psychologically, whether you are spiritually imbalanced. Sometimes we just have to reboot or rejuvenate ourselves spiritually, go inward, listen to our inner voice, our gut, our intuition, spirit, and really re-empower ourselves by reconnecting and doing what we know that needs to be done in order to reach our greatest potential. And while we usually focus on physical situations and physical ailments and how to bring our bodies back into balance, it would really be remiss if I overlook or gloss over the importance of all of those other aspects. So the mind, the spirit, the soul is very important in terms of our overall health and well-being. So I really want to re-emphasize that. So we talked about using breathing exercises, massage, other touch therapies like reflexology, shiatsu massage, deep tissue massage, movement meditative exercises like qigong and tai chi. We talked about crystal healing. I didn't so much get into that, but we have many tools. Essential oils will brighten the spirit or the mood. So and then even physical exercise that help to relax the mind and relieve stress, not only physically, but mentally. So there are many things that we discussed. And so I want you to be sure to go back and review those things, utilize those things, put those in your toolbox, so to speak, right? In terms of how to pull or draw from information that's important for our well-being. So today we are going to kind of go back to sort of how to physically keep the body well. And we're going to talk about detox. We're going to talk about how to cleanse and purify the body. We are, as you may know, of the Global Green Book, and we're adding a additional piece on detoxing. And so cleansing the body, ridding it of different poisons, toxins, substances that cause harm to the body is very important. And so we're going to get into some of that today, and we're adding some information about different ways of detoxing and digging on that. So, you know, that's also just a plug to let you know, and to spread the word that our latest edition of the Global Green Book will be coming soon, right? And of course, you can always add holistic or natural healing clinics and practitioners. Wherever you are, we can add those to our directory. And that's just a reminder to go to the Places app and also add other businesses that are friendly for Black people, preferably Black owned, but if not, at least Black friendly. So we always want to encourage that, but know that we're also adding that to our print form, our actual book form, in addition to the app. So let me see if I did well with trying to get our, to get our information for today up. Okay, I think it has worked. So let me scroll back up to the top here. So we're going to talk about just sort of the basics. You know, so we know that detoxification is simply the process of removing poisonous or harmful substances from the body, or at the very least mitigating or neutralizing those toxins or the effect those toxins have on the body. So we know that cleansing, which we sometimes use interchangeably, we know that that is also just cleansing or washing or ridding the body of unnecessary, unhealthy substances from the body. Right. And so we know with cleansing, we know there are always side effects. Sometimes, you know, I used to do these purification or fasting workshops where we would different herbs and substances that would cleanse or detox the body. And we would do colon cleansing and spiritual healing or cleansing baths and different things to cleanse the mind, the body, and the spirit. And in doing that, a lot of times people would experience what we call detox symptoms or the side effects of cleansing and detoxification. And so I've listed those here because it's very important to know that you may experience certain situations where it's not pleasant. You may have body aches. You may have headaches. You may have body odor. There may be bad breath, physical weakness, purging, where well, one end or the other. You know, the body is getting rid of toxins and things that it doesn't need. So that is a part of cleansing or detoxing. You may develop skin rashes, boils, cysts, things of that nature. You may feel tired or fatigued. All of these are common symptoms or side effects of doing a detoxification. And of course, the disclaimer here is to always do that under the advice or direction of your healthcare provider, especially if you have some sort of underlying health condition. And in some cases, it may not even be appropriate to do a detox or a cleanse, depending on what issue you're having. Now, of course, some train of thought, or some people believe that it is in those times that is most, beneficial to do a cleanse when you are fighting off some sort of dis-ease or some disorder to where you're needing to get rid of whatever might be causing that issue by cleansing and detoxing the body. Either way, the best way to do it is not alone, especially if you've never done a fast, or you've never done a detox cleanse, or you've never taken a full regimen of detox or cleansing herbs, to do that under the direction of someone. So this information, of course, is for educational purposes only, is to arm you with the knowledge, but then you take it further as to determining whether it's right for you and what other further direction you might need before doing any of these things. Now, one option, as opposed to some of the more strict cleansing or detox, is just simply adding some of these things into your normal diet and not doing it full scale. So if one way of detoxing is to do a 21-day juice fast, you may not do that without some direction, but you may just do a juice cleanse in terms of including juicing into your regular diet, so that you get the full nutrition and what have you from your juicing, not eliminating solid foods and just doing the juicing. So, that's an option. Or you may not say, hey, I'm going to do a liquid diet or a detox diet, and I'm going to restrict certain foods that I eat, and I'm going to include this regimen of certain herbs and such. You may simply include taking certain supplements to just do the cleansing again while still doing your normal routine. There's always variations or ways in which to do it. How you do it, you will have to determine what's best for you, get assistance in determining what's best for you. And with that being said, there are different methods of cleansing. So I've sort of mentioned them in my discussion just now. There's herbs and homeopathics that can be used to detox the body. One might do detox diets, where a live food detox. You may be detoxing from particular substances, so it may be sort of an elimination type of diet where you're excluding certain types of foods for a period of time, or something along those lines. Fasting is another method. Fasting can include nothing fast or water fast. It could include juice fasting, or it can include fasting for certain periods of the day for a certain number of hours, or fasting from certain types of foods. Detox body and foot baths are another method of cleansing. Full body detox baths, you could be oils, like essential oils, herbs, salts, full body, or you may do simply a foot detox bath, where if you're not able to immerse the whole body into the water, you may just do a foot bath that will detox the body. Massage is another method of cleansing. There are many types of massage that really or chi or muscle soreness or tightness, I should say, in the body, and that can help increase circulation and improve overall health. And then skin brushing is another option. This is how to detox or cleanse the skin, which we know is our largest organ. Dry skin brushing is a way of improving the lymphatic system, the body's immune response or ability to fight off infections. Skin brushing helps to cleanse the body of any excess dead skin cells on the body and helps stimulate the lymphatic system. So those are some of the methods that we'll discuss. And what those methods will help to do is to cleanse or detox the paths of elimination. So we know that the paths of elimination are the kidneys, liver, colon, skin, and lungs. And all of these organs have a particular function to filter or cleanse liquid or solid waste from the body. Some are more focused on usually when we're talking about cleansing or detox, but all are important. If one is overworked and full of toxins and being left ignored, it will impact the other paths of elimination. We most often think of the colon in terms of cleansing because regular bowel movements, defecation is a daily or should be a daily routine that most of us have. And so we usually don't have to think of it. However, when people suffer from constipation and are irregular, usually they will think solely of colon cleanse path of elimination. Something that can't be thought as frequently about, I feel, are the liver and the lungs. You know, usually you'll think of the kidneys because of urination. Usually you'll think of the skin because, of course, when it gets really intoxicated and overworked and left ignored, we'll have breakouts, we'll have rashes, we'll have abscesses, boils, things of that nature. They're different. And even with the colon, you know, you'll feel bloated, or the abdomen will be distended. You'll feel really sluggish and you know you've not had a bowel movement. But we don't often think of the quality of the liver and the blood, and we don't often think of the lungs. So I want to emphasize that all of these are important, and some of the ones that we don't think enough about in terms of cleansing and detoxifying are the liver and the lungs. So let's go into how to cleanse each of our internal paths of elimination. I'm going to skip over that handout. I don't really care for that handout. There's too many things on it that I don't really promote, so I'm going to skip over that one. So let's talk about the liver. So we know that the liver is responsible, right, for removing toxins from the bloodstream. It filters our blood. Most times we intoxicate the liver so badly, not only from foods, but from prescription drugs, recreational drugs, from alcohol, things that we put into the body that the liver has to work overtime to detox itself from. Fortunately for us, the liver is very resilient. It's very strong. It can even regenerate and regrow itself. However, you cannot take it for granted. So dietary things, environmental pollutants and toxins, these are things that produce serious intoxication of the liver. So the handouts, I hope you can see them clear. The one to the right is definitely not as clear. You all know I usually have to put my glasses on to be able to read that. So it may be a little challenge for you as well. But some of the foods here listed on the left, these are foods that are known to cleanse the liver. And most are really good to just include all the time. If you are weight conscious and you have a little excess weight on the body, you may not want to overdo it with the root vegetables like the beets and the carrots. But usually or if you are having some gastrointestinal issues and gas is a issue for you. You know, you may go easy on the broccoli and the cauliflower because those can sometimes produce, you know, excess gas or flatulence. But otherwise, all of these foods listed here are really healing to the liver and can probably be freely consumed in high volumes. Grapefruit, apples, these are full of fiber and natural pectins that are good for cleansing the liver as well as the colon. Beets and carrots, like I mentioned, these are really good for the blood, for cleansing the liver. And what we know is what cleanses the blood will also cleanse the liver and vice versa. Arugula, lemons, limes, avocados, spinach, garlic, turmeric, all of these are known to have good effects on aiding in the detoxification of the liver. Some additional ones that are listed here to the side is cilantro, and then specifically lemon water, but same thing, whether you're including lemons in your foods, whether your sauces, your dressings on top of your food, or whether you're adding it to your water, these are also great for the liver. Specifically cilantro, because cilantro specifically moves or removes heavy metals from the body. And we get these heavy metal toxins from various things. If we use aluminum pans or utensils, if we come in contact with lead, and I would probably bet a good amount of money that the lead that is, or the paints that are used in certain areas, probably in a lot of the African countries, unlike here in the States, it took many years before they had to create these laws to make it illegal to put lead in the paints. So they have these paints that now are lead free, but it hadn't always been that way. So I would wonder and would probably assume that some of the paints and such that are used on the continent may still contain lead, but these are considered heavy metals, and these are toxic into the body. Some makeup will have heavy metals in them. Some of the metal or silver, I don't know if they're really even silver, but the mercury amalgams that are in our fillings, that are in our mouths, this contains heavy metals. Certainly fish, certain fish will contain mercury. And so there are so many heavy metals. I just mentioned a couple, the lead and the mercury and things like that. We know that vaccines even will include mercury and some other heavy metals in them as well. So we come in contact with heavy metals that intoxicate the body. And cilantro is excellent for removing that substance from the body. So this is one to definitely take note of. If you eat a lot of Mexican food, you would most likely encounter it, but you can consciously and specifically add it to your diet if that's not, something that you normally eat, whether it's as a tea or whether you add it to your fresh salads, and that's probably the most likely ways to do it. But use it fresh. Some people may ground it up and add it in your foods and supplementation in other ways, but this is definitely worth adding because for sure we are coming into contact with heavy metals. This handout gives an idea of how to do a liver cleanse in terms of what you consume each day. This is definitely not a good copy, but it just gives an example of starting off your day with lemon water, and then including simple meals like your whole grains, like a brown rice with vegetables for your dinner and for your lunch, and including either a vegetable broth or a lemon water, or a juice with the foods that were listed previously in a juice, or a fruit or vegetable salad with some walnuts and some of the other things that have mentioned, oranges. You may add some berries or something in there to maybe make a salad, a fruit salad, or some dish with avocados, lemons, limes, dragon fruit, I think is listed there. So following sort of a very, very simple diet with these foods for 3 days is a way to do a liver cleanse as well. These are some liver cleanse juices. This gives you a recipe for a beet juice where you're adding carrots, beet, lemon, cucumber, and ginger. And then a pineapple smoothie with some of the foods and herbs that are great for the liver, but this one would also be really good for the kidneys as well. Any diuretic type of foods like cucumbers and celery, parsley, these are also excellent for detoxing the kidneys as well. So that little recipe is something that's good to use for the liver and the kidneys. And then turmeric. I pulled this handout specifically about turmeric just because it has so many good benefits, not only with inflammation. A lot of people will be aware of ginger and turmeric because of its anti-inflammatory properties, but it's also excellent for boosting the immune system and for cleansing the liver, among other things. So you see listed here some of its other benefits. And usually, and definitely in Indian or Ayurvedic culture, they will use it as a warm drink, an after dinner tea, if you will. Usually it'll be turmeric with some sort of milk. They, a lot of times, as their solvent or their extracting substance, they'll use whole milk. We know that other alternatives like almond milk or oat milk or hemp milk, you can use as the menstruum or solvent to extract the turmeric. But you would heat that, adding in the turmeric. Some people will add in ginger, a little bit of black pepper, and kind of cook it down. These are all options in terms of your warm, what they call golden milk, your turmeric tea. And again, this helps with all of these items listed here. Improved skin, circulation, helps with blood clotting, cleanses the blood and the liver, boosts the immune system, and overall detoxifies the body. So the kidneys, again, I've already mentioned the celery, the cucumber, parsley, all of these are excellent for the kidneys. Here are some herbs that are excellent and some foods that are excellent for the colon. Again, most times people will focus on the colon. Sometimes people exclusively focus on the colon as if that is the only eliminatory organ, but we know that it's not. But of course it is important because a lot of times we are not going to the bathroom and having bowel movements at the rate that we really need to. There's a saying amongst colon therapists that health begins and ends in the colon. If you have a healthy colon or a healthy gut, you have a healthy body. And so it's one of those things you cannot get around. You can't overlook. You have to move your bowels every day, every day. Let me say that one more time for 3 times. Every day you have to have bowel movements. It is not normal for you to not have a bowel movement every day. It is not normal. You eat every day, you have to eliminate every day. So the items listed here, these are known to help cleanse the colon. The chart here helps us to know the condition of our stool or our bowels, or our bowel movements, I should say. So this is called the Bristol stool chart. And you basically want to be sure to avoid the extremes, the type 1 and the type 7. You do not want your stool to be really solid, hardened pieces, nor do you want it to be completely liquid, runny stool or consistency. Ideally, what you want is somewhere, they say 5, I would say 4 or 5 is good. You know, you want it to be smooth, you want it to be soft, you want it to be easily passed from your body. So some of that part you'll know just from how you are releasing. You can feel you're having a bowel movement, how it's coming out of your body, and can get indication of whether they were hard to pass, right? Whether they were hard pieces, whether it plopped down or fell hard, you know, into the vessel that you're using to eliminate in. We know that if it easily breaks up once it hits the water, or you can tell as it's coming out that it's smooth, it's soft. This is the type of bowel movement you want to have. If you are having really hard, lumpy pieces, then likely you are not consuming enough water. Your body is dehydrated, and so is your stool. If you are having watery, entirely liquid, or mainly liquid or soft, mushy stool, then usually you are consuming something that you have a sensitivity or maybe even an allergen to, or you, for whatever reason, are not digesting your foods properly. So either you're doing poor food combining, you're not combining it with the proper foods, right? And indigestion is occurring and it's moving too quickly through your body, right? So it's not able to kind of break down, the body absorb all that it needs to absorb, the nutrients that the body can use going through being absorbed through the small intestines, and then the waste simply moving through the colon or the large intestines. It means it's running through too quickly without the body's ability to really utilize it and break it down and pull from it the nutrients that it needs. So this could be something that you shouldn't be consuming, or you're not consuming it correctly, right? Or some other type of digestion issue. Of course, people who have Crohn's or colitis or any of these sort of colon diseases know this issue very well. They have frequent bowel movements, and the foods don't process well, and they have that improper digestion, and foods kind of just run very quickly through them and pass out of the body before the nutrients can really be absorbed. You have to pay attention to these types of things because at this point, you're really there not eating for your health and retaining any nutrition, and you have to evaluate what changes you need to make. Okay, we eat for enjoyment. We know that in most of our cultures amongst Black, well, and not just Black people, because there are many other cultures that eat around food, like we fellowship and we commune around eating, right? So I'm not saying that's a problem. That's a cultural thing that even if some people say, no, you shouldn't eat for enjoyment or for pleasure, you should only eat to live. We know that that's probably not feasible for most of us and most cultural norms that we have. We will celebrate and include food with it, but we have to be mindful though of what foods we are consuming. And we still have to follow some good eating habits, some good food combining habits. And we do have to discriminate about what we eat. What we put in our bodies is important. How we eat it, how quickly we eat it, what we eat it with, whether we drink liquids with it or not. And if you remember from previous sessions, right? I would love if somebody puts in the chat the answer to this question. Should you drink with your food? And if so, how many ounces, or what's the limit or the amount of drink you should have with your food? There's a little test, a little pop quiz. Somebody indulge me in an answer. Okay, so I'm gonna move on and I'm gonna look back at the chat in a little bit, right? Okay, so we talked about the liver, we talked about the kidneys, we talked about the colon, talked a little bit earlier about the skin. We know that there are certain foods and such that are good for the skin. I really have to redo this lesson packet. Well, I actually did. I just could never find it quickly to pull up for class. But I have added certain foods and herbs that are good for the skin. Aloe, we know, is good for burns, but overall it's good for skin. It's very healing. to the skin. It helps prevent wrinkles and stretch marks. So we know that aloe is not just for burns, but aloe is also an excellent skin healing herb. We know that neem is a commonly used herb. A lot of times we end up using it internally and dealing with tropical fevers and such. But we also know that neem is good on the skin as well. So it's good for eczema, it's good for cuts, it's good for other skin problems as well. Marigold is a flower or herb that is also good for regrowing the skin and helping with other growths and boils and cysts and things on the skin. Cabbage, we mentioned cabbage when we were talking about, that was the liver. But we also, but it makes sense because what heals the liver or how you treat the skin is going to be those same herbs and foods that also will heal the liver and purify the blood. So it makes sense that cabbage was also under the liver section. Sandalwood, turmeric, rose, saffron, these are all herbs and spices that are also healing to the skin and help create beautiful skin. Lastly, lungs. We haven't talked a lot about lungs. In the last section, when we talked about stress release and we talked about creating a calm, healing, meditative environment, we talked about breathing exercises. So thank God we don't have to think about breathing, right? Breathing is both voluntary and involuntary. But one of the best ways to detox the lungs, in addition to herbs, is conscious breathing. And so we know that if there are environmental pollutants in your area, if you work outside, if you work in a chemical plant, if you work in construction or things where you know the environment has toxins and pollutants that you are breathing in every day or on a regular basis. I've had clients in the past that worked in water treatment or waste management. And of course, you're breathing in all of these toxins. It's very important to do lung detox. If you have asthma or if you constantly have sinus problems or bronchial issues, lung detox is very important. So conscious breathing, any number of breathing exercises like the fire breaths I just did are always going to be a good option for you, in addition to certain herbs that I'm going to go over. Let me scroll through and see what I have left in this. So we can talk about this next week. So yeah, let me stop sharing. Okay, and so let me just go over some of the herbs that are good for lung health. So in addition to doing breathing exercises and really pushing out the carbon from the carbon from the lungs that we breathe in and causes intoxication, we know that to regenerate the lungs and to tonify the lungs, there are several herbs that are good for that. So forgive me for not having this handout to show you, but there are herbs called lobelia, chaparral, peppermint, osha root, eucalyptus, lungwort, oregano, plantain leaves, and elecampane. You may not be familiar with these, so if you want me to send you the handout, feel free to email me, I'll send it to you. But these are herbs that if you know you have an issue with environmental toxins, you have compromised respiratory systems, these are herbs that are excellent to incorporate into your diet. So feel free to utilize these. I will say that some, are not easy to find. Some over the years have even been put as not good to use internally. So I'm not giving, so I'm not saying to take any of these, but for educational purposes, these are respiratory support herbs that have been traditionally used to support lung health and lung detoxification. Okay. So let me check the chat. Did anybody answer my question? Dr. Wright answered the question. Go ahead, Dr. Wright. Thank you. So, I didn't even know you were on then. So yes, ideally, if you do not eat, did anybody else answer? No. Let me check. I got excited. So yes, ideally, if you are eating, focus on eating. If you must, you have to restrict it to 4 ounces of liquid. But yes, as a rule, and every time I go out, people are always like, "You're not drinking anything?" What, you know, because if you go out and eat, right, that's the first question, right? The server is always giving you the opportunity to figure what you want to eat. Well, I'm here to eat. I'm not here to eat, drink, right? I'm here to eat. So I'm focused on what I'm eating. But they said, well, what can I bring you to drink? So I'm always with people who are so shocked that, oh, well, I'm not really a drinker. Oh, I don't care for anything. Okay, well, you can bring me the water. But ideally, yes, focus on eating when it's time to eat. And if you must, or if you're just so used to consuming, you have to restrict it to only 4 ounces. Now, let me just say, if you're used to drinking when you're eating, you're going to drink more than 4 ounces. So you have to, at the very least, get to the point where you're restricting it to no more than 4 ounces. Anything more will interfere with your digestion. Your stomach already has digestive juices in it that is responsible for breaking down your food. If you put too much other liquids and fluids into the stomach when it's responsible for breaking down your food, it will cause indigestion on some level. And sometimes we don't realize it, or you think you don't have any kind of gastrointestinal issues. I promise you, if you always drink 8, 10, 16, 20 ounces with your food every meal, you are interfering with your digestion. So yes, if you can wait and not drink with your meals, you will have better and more proper digestion. Thank you, Dr. Wright. What Sister Denise said. Okay, sure. Yeah, so if you do have the need for the handout, feel free to email me. I will gladly supply that to you. What we will talk about next week, and I'm just scrolling through to see if I'm missing any questions. So what we will talk about as sort of the last week in this session is the very common health issues, and I always kind of include that in this session, where we'll talk about diabetes, we'll talk about the glycemic index and the types of carbohydrates that we should consume, the types that we should avoid. We'll talk about high blood pressure, what supplementation is good for regulating your blood pressure, what supplements are good in terms of vitamins, herbs, things of that nature, okay? And so, I know I can talk, so I'm not gonna usually let no time go by and not utilize it. So the other thing I want to talk about is the handouts that's usually in the packet. If you are trying to evaluate how well you're doing, now we talked about the diet check. I think that's probably in weeks 3 and 4, where as part of the packet, there was something that was a diet checklist to give you indication of whether or not, you drink enough water, or how you ate, or how you combined your foods. There are some other checklists that I think are important if you are evaluating how well you're doing with your diet or overall health. I have a parasite checklist, a candida checklist, and what we talked earlier about in terms of the heavy metals and the mercury. There's also a mercury and heavy metal or toxic metal questionnaire. If you are interested and you want to email me, I will gladly send you these. I think these are good tools for getting an idea of whether you're consuming these things. If you recall, I was giving you examples of how you may come in contact with heavy metals, right? So this checklist will give you all of those details. It's like 30 questions. And of course, all of them are based on your likelihood of being in contact with toxic metals. Same thing with Candida. Most people are so consumed with parasites. As a colon therapist, people always come to me or would in the past asking, oh, can you see if I have parasites, 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 parasites. However, we used to say the standard American diet, but I would say a lot of our diets, whether it's African, whether it's Latin or Hispanic, we eat a lot of starches. We eat a lot of yam, or we eat a lot of bread. So even with Italian, with pastas and breads. So a lot of cultures, we eat a lot of starches. And so most of us will have an overgrowth of candida or yeast in the body. So I always point people to that issue and identifying whether you're consuming too many starches and developing an overgrowth of candida, as opposed to the overwhelming concern about parasites. Not that, I mean, parasites are important too, and definitely in the natural healing world, a lot of times people associate cancer with parasite toxicity. So I'm not saying that it's not important to know whether you have parasites, but I think on average, most people come in contact with foods and we create lifestyles that give us too much candida or yeast in the body. So there's also a handout about that kind of lets you check how you're doing with that and whether you're consuming too many foods and have a lifestyle to where you're creating that environment for candida to overgrow in the body. So I just wanted to kind of say that, but these are sort of those little self-tests and checks that we can do to really evaluate how well we're doing. And so I am now out of time. If there are a couple of the comments, I have a few minutes to stay on and answer those. But thank you for joining me today. And as always, I bid you good health and peace.
All right, thank you so much, Nana Akua. That was a great lecture from Nana Akua. I hope each and everyone were following. And also for those who were requesting for handouts, check out in the chat room for Nana Akua's email. That's nanaakua1@gmail.com. We appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, Nana Akua. And also everyone, thank you for being still with us, still to the end of this lecture. As of now, we're now rushing to Dr. Taryn Wright so that we can learn more about Pan-African history and the organizing lectures. Yes, Dr. Taryn Wright, welcome to the lecture.
Yes, hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. So you'll see me momentarily. Welcome to the Pan-African History and Organizing course. So last week, and you'll see me in 2 seconds. Last week, we were watching our film or revisiting the film and highlighting particular points. So the week before, I kind of overloaded you with the readings, and I gave you all the readings from Nkrumah to the organizational bodies to Amilcar Cabral and others. And so I'm hoping that you all still see that in there, and we're going to continue with them. Let me let you see me so I can say hello. And then we're going to go right to just this brief clip that I wanted to use in the film on Amilcar Cabral. And I'll pretty much kind of give you an introduction to why we're using that and what we're discussing with regard to Amilcar Cabral. I sort of prefaced it last week with regard to the ethnic diversity that I always have people wanting to talk about and discuss in this course. Sorry, something is going on. I tried to click on my camera. And yes, I was in the other session. I was listening to Nana Akua. Thank you, Nana Akua. Yes, I couldn't resist when I saw nobody responded to your question. I decided to respond with regard to eating and drinking. Okay, so let me see. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I think you should see me. Okay, good. So with regard to eating and drinking, I had to put my 2 cents in because yes, I in fact do know that you are not supposed to drink while you eat. And I typically don't, right? but my bad thing is I like warm stuff. So if I do, it's going to be warm, and I don't know if that's good either. So, but anyway, so yeah, I put my 2 cents in, but I'm still getting back in my lane, which is the Pan-African history and organizing. So, so a mill called Cabral. I'm always being asked this, and I make sure that I cover it because, you know, it could be week 1, and what students in this class or ambassadors, let me not call you students because you're not typical students per se, even though we're all students of life, but ambassadors in the program will always ask me is about the ethnic difference, ethnic strife, ethnic conflict. How do we deal with that when we're trying to unify? And the reality is this, I mean, and the answer is across the board for many people the same, meaning that everywhere where we have conflict and strife, the constant reminder has to be that we have a common enemy, we have a common detractor, we have a common condition, which is having to deal with white supremacy and culture. And as it manifests on the continent, it would be in the form of colonialism, imperialism, and today neo-colonialism, where unfortunately the detractors of African people are overwhelmingly other African people. And this is why culture is always important, okay? Where culture does play a role in our liberatory process for more than one reason. So I'm gonna explain that, and then I'm going to go to the footage in the film, Cuba and African Odyssey. If you notice, there's a whole about 10 minutes on a mill called Cabral. I'm gonna show a couple of minutes of it, and then you will have to refer to it on your own. It is in the group. For those of you who are not in the group, the film I'm referring to is on YouTube, both parts 1 and 2. It's called Cuba and African Odyssey. And let me be very clear. I use this once again, if you didn't hear me discuss it last week, I use this only as a means to enter the conversation about African independence on the continent of Africa. It is for the purpose of going through the list of African nations that are liberated in a particular period. And it is not with a fixation on Cuba. Cuba plays an important role. Hands down, they are unparalleled in the world with regard to its role in relationship to Africa. Unparalleled in terms of, you know, if you consider it a Latin American or Caribbean nation, unparalleled in relationship to any other Latin American nation who most generally defer to Europe and Spain and Portugal as their mother countries, as opposed to Africa. And it's to the contrary with Cuba. Cuba sees Africa as its ancestral homeland, motherland, place of origin for the masses of its people, and therefore committed to engaging in the process of liberation in Africa. And so, yeah, there's still critics. We're not saying that Cuba doesn't have its own issues with regard to racism, and I think that we do know that, some of us. That being said, in terms of international activity and assisting our independence struggle, Africa hasn't had a better friend than Cuba. That consistently played a role in the liberatory process on the African continent, from the Congo to Angola to Guinea-Bissau to South Africa, you know, on and on. So this right here gives you some of that context, right? It was a alliance between the unaligned nations, right? And so Cuba emerges as the leader of the non-aligned nations, meaning all the nations other than the Western nations, okay? Now, Amilcar Cabral, I just want to go right into it because I don't want to miss out on time. Let me make sure. Okay, I'm at 11:23. So, Amilcar Cabral in particular, I gave you I believe, two readings from him. If not, I'll give you another one. All of the readings that I gave you come from the text called Return to the Source. And they are actually the transcription of speeches that he gave. Amilcar Cabral, in particular, a young revolutionary who decided that he would engage in the organizing of African people in Guinea-Bissau against the Portuguese. PAIGC is the organization. And he would pretty much train armed militants in Guinea-Bissau that were the regular men and women of the nation or of this colonial territory at the time. The interesting thing is that I actually met one of these women who engaged in armed struggle in Guinea-Bissau, very progressive sister there. And it was the regular person who would fight this struggle in Guinea-Bissau. And there's a reason for it. There's a strategy, there was a tactic, and there's ideology involved in why it would be the civilians, not necessarily soldiers, who fought in Guinea-Bissau, and had everything to do with this philosophy and ideology that Amilcar Cabral was the proponent of, which was that these people in the place called Guinea-Bissau, prior to colonialism, were never one unified people. They were ethnically different, and rightfully so. We don't even have to explain that, because to understand that Africa prior to colonialism knows nothing of this idea of being Black, knows nothing of this idea of a unified African identity, okay? We are existing in our natural environments and organically involved in our groups, be it nations or empires, and that is what had been going on since time immemorial. That being said, under colonialism, the invasion of Europeans, domination of Europeans, injecting of imperialism into Africa, now for the first time, groups that are organically the same are being separated because of the colonial lines being cut. Groups that are very different are being forced together, right? We know this in specifically places like Nigeria, you know, but then you can look all over the African continent and see how groups, nations, empires that had been organic and constituted for hundreds, thousands of years are now being divided due to colonialism, right? You can look at the Senegambia region and understand that, you know, one country is Senegal, one country is Gambia. However, one of the dominant ethnic groups is the Wolof, right? And now you will find the people partially in Senegal, partially in Gambia, but they're all Senegambians, right? Or the Mandinka, which spans multiple countries, or the Fula, the Fulani, that spans multiple countries, right? These colonial borders really mean nothing to African people because they have everything to do with European interest and domination, and less to do with anything that has to do with us organically. That being said, Amilcar Cabral recognized this ethnic diversity and even difference amongst African people. And he is saying that this situation, this condition which we find ourselves in, where we are under colonial domination by Europeans, is a first-time experience and scenario for us, okay? What will bring us together as a result of our common condition of being oppressed and exploited will be this struggle that we engage in here in Guinea-Bissau, okay? The struggle, and this is to quote him, the struggle will prepare people for the victory. The struggle will prepare people who were never homogeneous before to function as a unified nation for the first time, okay? And this was his philosophical or ideological line with regard to the struggle in Guinea-Bissau. His intention was to turn the common person, the woman, the man, into armed militants who will fight for their nation and be the glue that binds it going forward. Meaning, it's just like anything. If you go through a common struggle together, it becomes something that consummates your relationship, okay? And so he understood that this struggle against the Portuguese would do that. And although Cuba is lending assistance strategically and in terms of weaponry, Amilcar Cabral insisted that in the struggle in Guinea-Bissau, the Cubans would not be allowed to fight and put boots on the ground and take up arms on behalf of the people of Guinea-Bissau. This is because it wasn't their fight. This is because the people were engaging in a process of coming together, fortifying their relationships for the first time, although ethnically diverse, ethnically not the same, but with a common enemy, okay? With a common dilemma, with a common condition of being oppressed and exploited under colonialism, okay? So Amilcar Cabral is progressive in his understanding. And this is also an opportunity for me to address one other thing. A lot of people are critical of the Pan-Africanists that emerge on the African continent because there's this conversation about their tendency to be Marxist-Leninists. To some extent, fine. That is a legitimate criticism because unfortunately, many African nations and leadership, people in leadership will gravitate towards the Eastern Bloc and their philosophies as though the people in Eastern Europe, as they fought their struggles, are thinking about African people. They are not. One thing I always tell my students, and one thing I always said, even as I was cadre in a political organization that had a Marxist and Leninist line, my contention, my position has always been that all you need to know about Marx and Lenin is that they were not thinking about African people. Period. They weren't talking about us. They weren't even thinking about us. Now, if we get something in terms of strategies and tactics that's applicable to our struggle, fine. But know this, the way in which African people were colonized on the African continent has everything to do with stripping the people of their culture and erasing the history in order to subjugate them. Okay, everywhere we are, this is a standard routine process in domination of African people. Okay, erasure of culture, erasure of historical memory. And so the Marxist and Leninist line believe that, culture and history are not important factors in the liberatory process, that it's only about a material assessment and approach and attacking class differences in the context of society. That paradigm does not neatly fit into the African context, okay? It does not. And this is why Amilcar Cabral talks about history as a weapon and a tool of liberation, culture as a weapon and a tool of liberation. He, unlike the other Pan-Africanists on the African continent, do not adopt a totally Marxist-Leninist line. And he recognizes that for African people to liberate ourselves, we must reclaim our history. We must reclaim our culture. I'm gonna go a little bit off the path 1 second and quote Dr. John Henry Clark. He talks about Blackness, which is totally a 20th century phenomenon, this idea of racial, well, not even 20th century, but this idea of racism and race as a construct is only 400 or 500 years old, being born out of my idea, I think, the Iberian Peninsula, right? This racialized view originating from this moment in time where the Moors and the Iberians come in contact with each other. And of course, you see the expulsion of the Moors. But the point is that the world has only known a racialized reality since the last 400 or 500 years, right? 1492 on. So we're a little bit more than 400 or 500 years now. That being said, well, no, it's about 500 years. But that being said, race has only existed for that long, but culture has always existed, right? Culture is how we live. Culture is who we truly are, how we worship, how we engage each other, how we think about ourselves, what are our norms, our values, okay? Our aspirations. Culture is who we are. So Dr. Clark talks about race. Black only tells you how you look. African tells you who you are. Okay? And so, and yes, once we say African, because of the ethnic diversity of African people, which is responsible for the diversity of the world, we have to be a little more specific. When we say African now, we have to be talking about the best of what it means to be African, because we know everything African doesn't mean that it's automatically good, right? We are like any other group of people where we have good and bad and indifferent in between. And so what I'm saying is this: culture has to be part of the liberatory process. And that's also what Amilcar Cabral was saying. Why? Because our culture was ripped from us. Many of you are on the African continent. Everywhere you are on the African continent, whatever country you're in, that country has what? A colonial language that was imposed on the people. So that is the mark, and linguistic domination is one of the greatest and most obvious marks of domination and colonialism, right? Linguistic domination. It should look crazy that I'm an African person. I see you all talking about this in the group, about the languages we use here. We're using English because simply we have been dominated by the British and then the Americans, and that is what we speak, but there's no preference for it. And you will never hear me talk about myself as an Angla in the way some of our brothers and sisters who are African in what is considered Latin America will consider themselves Latina or Latino or Hispanic. Because culturally, I am not Angla, I am not Anglophone. Culturally, I'm actually African, and I recognize the linguistic domination that is the mark of colonialism and slavery on my people, right? But I also am aware of the fact that power is about control. I mean, language is about control and power, right? Language is about, can I force you to speak my language? And I decide what is the correct form of that language, right? So all of these things, when we call ourselves liberating our people, have to be reclaimed. Linguistically, yes. Culturally, yes. And so let me be very clear. Many of the African continent's Pan-Africanists would have a Marxist and Leninist line that subscribes to a hardcore material analysis that says, forget history, forget culture, let's deal with just the material reality of colonialism and deal with class. that relates to the difference between the material reality of one group and versus another. What I'm saying to you is Amilcar Cabral stands out and is set apart from the continent's Pan-Africanist. Why? Because he is someone who said, no, 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 no. We can't take a Eastern European model for liberation and struggle against domination and neatly put it on the African context and think that it applies. It does not. And my contention is the same. It does not. Culture, beyond the material reality and conditions imposed on us, culture is relevant. History is relevant. History tells us who we are, right? And culture affirms who we are. So there's no way people who have had that erased and taken from them and trampled upon in their process of liberating themselves, reclaiming their people, land, and reality can say those things are not relevant. Also, they are part of the liberatory process. That being said, I'm gonna throw a little Shekinah Jop in there and say that I do think that there is a cultural thread that runs through all of Black Africa. And you can find Shekinah Jop discussed that in a book called The Cultural Unity of Black Africa, right? So once you say, okay, we've got to recognize culture, we've got to recognize history as tools of liberation, as weapons of liberation. Now we say, what is what are the aspects of our culture that we should elevate as opposed to aspects that are not as positive, that we can let fall by the wayside? And I would say, if you want to know a little more about that, there is some evidence, according to Shekinah Jop, that there is a common thread that runs through all our African cultures. So when we talk about elevating that, we want to talk about the best of what it means to be African, okay? We want to talk about the cultural unity and continuity of Black Africa, the commonalities that we have that are shared, right? The role of our mothers, the role of, our ancestors throughout our cultures. These are common threads through many African ethnicities, and he goes in depth with regard to that. But to bring it back home to Amilcar Cabral, which is really the subject of my lecture today, his position is, and you can go read, you can actually Google History as a Weapon, where he talks about it in an essay. I might share it in the group. I don't know, maybe that'll be another piece I share on Amilcar Cabral. But I'm actually moving on to Nkrumah for next week and organizational bodies. But I probably, if I get the piece on History as a Weapon, I'll share that in the group. But you have 2 pieces on Amilcar Cabral already. And I'm going to go out with just a brief clip about Amilcar Cabral and the actual struggle in Guinea-Bissau, and you'll hear everything I'm saying be reiterated, except you'll see some of the historical figures who were involved in that struggle, okay? I'm gonna leave it there because I don't wanna ramble on. I wanna stay close to the time frame that we now have. And let me just cue this. I'm gonna come off the camera and then I'm gonna cue the video, okay? So actually, if you have any questions about anything related to this, you can actually put it in the chat real quick, and I will address it I'll try to address it. But I'm about to share my screen. So 1 second. Cuba. Okay. Hold on 1 second. You might hear it, but I don't want to show it just yet. hopefully, okay, hopefully you all definitely finish watching the piece on Patrice Lumumba, right? Okay, here we go. All right, so I don't know how long this is, but it's only a few minutes, and I will stop it that I'm gonna show on here. Hold on one second. Let's see. Okay, can I have permission to share my screen?
Yes, you are allowed.
Okay. Okay.
In January of 1966, only 2 months after Che retreated from the Congo, Cuba hosted an unprecedented gathering that included virtually every armed revolutionary movement from the 3 poorest continents. The Tricontinental Conference reinforced the island's role as the leader of internationalism. For Fidel, this was a good opportunity to assess the qualities of the revolutionaries he wanted to support. It was undoubtedly Amilcar Cabral who stole the limelight. Cabral, only 31 years old, was leading a fierce struggle against the Portuguese Empire in one of Africa's smallest and poorest nations, Guinea-Bissau.
Esta conferencia, aquí en Cuba, territorio libre de América, y primer país socialista en el hemisferio occidental, es en realidad una grande promesa, una grande esperanza para todos los pueblos que luchan contra el imperialismo.
Pero ya había un antecedente de América cuando se había entrevistado en el recorrido que hace el Che por distintos países, que llega a Conakry y tiene la oportunidad de hablar con América. Y el Che dice que uno de los movimientos de liberación más serios que hay en ese momento y de más posibilidad en ese momento es el movimiento de la liberación de la colonia de Guinea-Bissau y Cabo Verde.
Après les grands discours de Fidel Castro, Amilcar Cabral fait un discours remarquable. Il a caractérisé, je m'appelle ça, très bien la situation en Afrique à partir de son propre pays, en parlant des ethnies, en parlant d'états de pauvreté, d'exploitation, pour justifier l'idée de continuer la lutte armée. C'est parce qu'il n'y avait pas autre voie, parce que les grandes puissances s'opposaient à l'indépendance des colonies portugaises, par exemple.
For years, Amilcar's struggle was not of much consequence. But when the guerrillas started capturing territory, suddenly the importance of this neglected colony became evident. For Portugal, much more was at stake in Guinea-Bissau. This tiny colony could prove to be the empire's Achilles heel.
Y se liberaba Guinea-Bissau, y así se demostró después. Se desprendía la liberación del resto de los países de habla portuguesa que colonizados. Entonces, allí estaba el eslabón más flojo que tenían de la cadena, desde el punto de vista de los portugueses. No podían permitir, tuvieron hasta que hicieron todo el esfuerzo para no permitir que se dejara ninguna de las colonias, y mucho menos Guinea, que iba a ser el ejemplo del resto de las colonias para su liberación.
Il n'avait pas beaucoup de richesses. À ce moment-là, la Guinée devait recevoir de l'argent du Portugal. C'était un pays où on faisait l'agriculture, pas plus. L'agriculture arriérée, on faisait la Guinée. Et tandis que ce n'était pas le cas en Angola, où il y avait des immigrés qui étaient des commerçants, des hommes d'affaires. C'était des richesses de l'Angola et de Mozambique qu'ils voyaient, parce que Guinée n'ont rien fait.
The Portuguese were aware of their weakness, but they held a trump card. The government leased a strip of land on the Azores Islands to the US Defense Department. That airbase was used to protect American allies in the east, like Israel and Saudi Arabia. But the lease was renewable annually, so Portugal had every intention to use the Azores airbase as a bargaining chip.
Well, under the fascist regime of Portugal, Angola and Mozambique and Guinea-Bissau were part of Portugal. So the idea of giving up these colonies was unthinkable for that regime. So if we went to them and said, look, you must get out of Angola, we'll be very upset with you and all that, they might well have cut us out of the Azores. So NATO and the Cold War was far more important to us. There was a special law about not allowing U.S. arms given to Portugal to use them in Africa, but they did violate it, and we didn't do anything about it. In fact, we did not cut them off, even though we knew it, they were using them.
Nous n'avons pas même voulu nous mettre dans cette guerre-là entre l'Est et l'Ouest. Nous n'avons pas voulu, non. Mais malgré que beaucoup de gens disaient que ce sont des communistes, beaucoup de gens disaient ça, mais on n'avait pas de preuves. Comme disait Amilcar, nous étions des nationalistes africains, sans option idéologique.
Amilcar knew that it would be difficult to avoid labeling his movement, and having Cuban fighters would do little to dispel the belief that they were firmly allied to the Eastern Bloc. But he had a vision and a very clear strategy as to how to fight his battle for independence.
Es decir, que Amílcar no llega pidiendo, deme hombre, mándenme hombre, ¿no? Teníamos la idea de que habíamos sacado ya del Congo, de que venían a venir más tropas de cubanos a ayudar a Amílcar. Y en aquel momento Amílcar no quería más tropas de cubanos.
Son los guineanos que tienen que luchar. Y tú metes un batallón ahí, va a ser el batallón y no los canguros. Y tienen que aprender mediante la lucha, prepararse para la victoria. Es una idea muy, aunque fuera un poco más larga la lucha, era una idea muy interesante de ir forjando en medio de la lucha la nación. Hay que forjar una nueva nación, además tribus diferentes, solo la lucha por unirla.
Che's defeat in the Congo was still a fresh wound, and Fidel began to consider how his help could be more effective. This time, the bulk of Cuban support came in the form of artillery experts, doctors, and technicians. Soldiers would go only if requested.
They also took some lessons from the debacle in Congo. In Guinea-Bissau, the involvement was quite different. It was more of, in a good sense, technical nature of helping local forces of PAGC, the army, especially helping in those specialities when they hadn't got enough expertise, you see, to fight Portuguese. So it's more of, in the good sense, supportive role, you see.
Amilcar had no illusions about his capacity to defeat the mighty Portuguese Empire. He wanted to wear them down in order to get them to the negotiating table.
En la conversación que tiene Amílcar conmigo, en el frente, él me explica, se basaban en no atacar los cuarteles con intenciones de tomarlos, porque no había suficiente fuerza en condiciones en ese momento para eso. Lo que quería era desangrar, hacerle baja, bastante baja al enemigo y hacerle la vida imposible con ese tipo de combate. Hasta que se le haría la vida imposible en los cuarteles.
The war escalated, and the Portuguese sent 22,000 more soldiers. Amilcar's demoralization tactics had worked. The Portuguese felt trapped. Veteran captains from the colonial army in Guinea-Bissau decided to take the initiative in their own hands. It was they who overthrew the dictatorship, creating the Carnation Revolution in Portugal. And within months, the Portuguese colonial empire crumbled like a house of cards.
In this liberation movement, there was no military victory, never. And they did not destroy the colonial machine, but they created, even vis-à-vis Algeria and France for that matter, they created such a situation that before getting victory, they force the enemy to retreat, to come to some compromise. Usually it's in the form, it's compromise. In the essence, it's the victory of the liberation forces. That's exactly happened in each and every country.
The Portuguese army left Guinea-Bissau in October 1974. But the man who pushed the empire over the brink was not there to witness Nino Neto, the leader of Angola's liberation movement. Cuba had for years...
Okay, so I'm just going to end it there. You got a nice blip. I'm 10 minutes over. You got a nice blip on the story of Amilcar Cabral and his role in terms of the PAIGC and Guinea-Bissau and the people's struggles there. You know, the understanding that, yes, we have differences. We have differences that are longer and more organic than the differences we now have as a result of our colonial status or condition, meaning we have always been ethnically different on the African continent. We represent the world's diversity. That being said, our common condition around the globe at this present moment is fighting off the scourge of white supremacy and culture that decreases all our life chances. That being said, we must unify around our opposition to the decrease of all our life chances and our well-being worldwide. And that is where you make your peace and you engage in struggle. Like, for example, you all are participating in I Love Black People. We are all ethnically diverse. However, our common interest in being here is dealing with and fighting off white supremacy and culture that manifests as racism, right? And we're all clear about that. So when you ask, how do we deal with the ethnic differences, the way you deal with it is to talk about the commonalities and to address the commonalities. And when you are pigeonholed into acting out against somebody who is ethnically diverse from you, but racially the same and suffering from white supremacy and culture, then you have to also reflect and ask yourself why, whose interests are you advancing at that present time and in that place, right? So sometimes some of these questions are answered with some internal reflection around the role each of us play in advancing white supremacy against each other, okay? Yes, unfortunate colonialism and indoctrination and domination has made us the vessels of white supremacy and culture sometime, and we acted out towards each other. This is why xenophobia in South Africa is a problem, okay? Given the situation in South Africa with all the history of the Europeans and the so-called Afrikaners, we have a problem with xenophobia against other African people. It's amazing, right? So this is also, we have to attack this, ideologically first, the thinking of people first, and then we follow that with action, okay? I am going to end there. Oh, the documentary. Hi, Denise. The documentary is called Cuba, an African Odyssey. Okay. Yeah. Okay, Denise. Thank you. Always tuned in. Thank you so much. So Cuba, an African Odyssey is the film that we just watched a clip of, and you should have watched it in its entirety. I'll be posting more and then Milka Cabral this week as others watch the film, but you saw the most important clip to talk about the ethnic differences and how do we attack that. Also, coming up this week, I'll be going on to Nkrumah and looking at organizational bodies that facilitate the rise of continental unity, this concept of Pan-Africanism, and then the subsequent bodies. So in other words, the OAU, the AU, and assessing whether or not they do anything for African people in our plight. Right? Are they Pan-Africanist in nature? Meaning, is the African Union today a Pan-Africanist body? I don't know. 60% of the funding of the African Union comes from the European Union. Can you be free to do what you want to do if majority of your funding comes from an opposing entity? The entity that benefits from you not being unified? I don't know. So we'll talk about that. Okay. And I'll have some readings to support the history of how these bodies came about. All right. So thank you all for staying on to the end. We appreciate you giving your time, loving African people, Black people through action. I am because we are.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, Dr. Tarin Wright.
Thank you.
For a great lecture.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. Thank you. I would like to thank Natalia all the way from Namibia, Richard Danim, Aaron Chalaba, Nyonkur, John Jones. My apologies if I pronounce your names wrongly. James Limba, we appreciate you, brother. Our Facebook family, we love you. K-Phone, we love you. Makos Ndebele, appreciate Sister Denise Shabazz, we appreciate you. Anthony, thank you so much. Ambassador Clyde, follow all the way from Ghana, we appreciate you. Sulex Yosef, Trevor Chinwe, we appreciate you. I've mentioned all of you who stayed until the end of the lecture. Hope to see you next week. Hopefully you have a blessed week and also enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you, love and peace, goodbye.